Good evening. Tonight's tale concerns a most ancient of legends, a story whispered in villages, recounted by firelight, and dreaded on nights when the moon is full. As the old rhyme warns, even a man who is pure at heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolfsbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright. Of course, we assure you this is merely a work of fiction. There are no wolves walking as men, at least not in your neighborhood. What you are about to hear is a performance crafted with the aid of artificial intelligence. Any resemblance to persons living, deceased, or otherwise transformed is purely coincidental. And so, with the lights suitably dimmed, let us begin. Enjoy the show.
Good evening, I'm John Talbot with Channel 7 News. Tonight marks the opening of the annual Moonlight Carnival, a traveling fair that set up shop just outside our downtown area on the old Hendricks property. The fair promises 3 nights of rides, games, and family entertainment under what forecasters are calling a particularly bright full moon this evening. Local businesses are expecting quite a boost as families from 3 counties are expected to attend. The carnival features classic attractions, including a Ferris wheel, bumper cars, a haunted funhouse, and what organizers are calling the largest petting zoo to visit our area in over a decade. We now go live to Joan Raymond at the fairgrounds.
Thanks, John. I'm standing here among the flashing lights and carnival music, and I have to say the atmosphere is absolutely electric tonight. Families are streaming in through the main gates, teenagers are laughing on the tilt-a-whirl, and the smell of funnel cake, cotton candy, and popcorn fills the air. The carnival workers tell me they've been setting up for 2 days, and tonight's turnout is exceeding their expectations. I spoke earlier with several local families who say they drove over an hour just to be here for opening night. The Henderson family from Millers Creek brought their 3 kids, and Mrs. Henderson told me this is exactly the kind of wholesome entertainment their community has been missing. Behind me, you can see the Ferris wheel slowly turning against that incredibly bright full moon, almost like something out of a postcard. The moon is so bright tonight, it's casting shadows almost like daylight, and carnival goers are saying it adds a magical quality to the whole experience. Local teenagers seem particularly excited, with many planning to stay until the fair's 11 p.m. closing time. Back to you, John.
Thank you, Joan. Sounds like a perfect night for family fun. We'll continue following the carnival's 3-day run here in town, and we're told tomorrow night will feature a special fireworks display at... I'm sorry, we're getting breaking news from our newsroom. Joan? Are you still there?
Yes, Sean, I'm here. But something's definitely happening. I can see ambulances arriving at the main entrance, their lights flashing, and paramedics are rushing toward the back section of the fairgrounds near the funhouse and petting zoo area. Families with small children are starting to gather near the gate, and some are leaving quickly, carrying their kids and not looking back. I can hear shouting from the direction the paramedics went, and several carnival workers are running toward that same area. The music from the rides is still playing, but you can sense something has shifted in the atmosphere here.
Joan, we're receiving reports of what appears to be some kind of animal attack at the Moonlight Carnival. Can you tell us what you're seeing from your position?
John, I can see at least 3 ambulances now, and paramedics are wheeling gurneys toward what looks like teenagers. From what I can observe, these appear to be bite wounds, and they look severe. Sheriff's deputies are arriving on scene, and I can see them cordoning off the entire back section of the fairgrounds with yellow tape. The petting zoo area appears to be completely shut down. One of the carnival workers I spoke with earlier is shaking his head and pointing toward the woods behind the fairgrounds. He keeps saying something about the animals being spooked before this happened, but I can't get close enough to get a proper interview with all the emergency activity.
Joan, we're getting word that at least 3 teenagers have been rushed to Mercy General Hospital with what witnesses are describing as severe bite wounds. Sheriff's office is calling this an animal attack, though they haven't specified what kind of animal. The fair's back section has been temporarily closed while authorities investigate, but the rest of the carnival remains open for now. We'll continue to follow this developing story throughout the evening and bring you updates as they become available. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
All right, folks, this is Larry Cheney, and you're listening to Midnight Conversations here on KROW 94.7. It's just past 11 p.m. on what's been a pretty unusual evening in our little corner of the world. Now, I know we all heard the news about that incident at the Moonlight Carnival tonight, and the phones have been absolutely lighting up ever since that story broke. The official word from the Sheriff's Department is that we had some kind of wild animal attack. 3 kids hospitalized with bite wounds. But here's the thing, and this is why I love doing late-night radio. The real stories, the things people actually saw and experienced, they don't always match up with what gets reported on the evening news. I've been getting calls from folks who were at that carnival tonight, and what they're telling me is, well, it's got me scratching my head, and honestly, it's got me a little unsettled. So let's dive into this and see what really happened out there. All right, let's take our first call tonight.
Yeah. Hi, Larry. This is... Well, I'd rather not give my full name if that's all right, but folks around here know me. I farm about 2 miles east of town, been working the same land my dad worked before me. I was out doing my evening check on the cattle around 10:30 tonight. You know how it is, with predators around, you gotta make sure your livestock is secure before you turn in for the night.
Sure. That makes perfect sense. What happened during your check?
Well, with that full moon being so bright tonight, I could see clear across my entire pasture without even needing my flashlight. Beautiful night, really. The kind that makes you grateful to live out here in the country. But Larry, I saw something at the tree line that I honestly don't know how to describe it, and I've been trying to make sense of it for the past hour.
Take your time. Tell us what you saw.
It was huge, way bigger than any wolf or coyote I've ever encountered, and I've lived here my whole life, 63 years come December. But here's the part that's really got me shaken up, and I know how this is going to sound, but this thing wasn't running on 4 legs like a normal predator. It was standing upright, like a man would stand, but it was covered head to toe in dark fur.
Standing upright. You're sure about that?
I may be getting on in years, but my eyes are still sharp. This thing was standing at the edge of my property, just at the border between my pasture and the woods, and it was looking in the direction of town. When I slammed my truck door, the sound echoed across the field, and this creature turned its head toward me. Those eyes, they reflected the moonlight like a pair of headlights, yellow gold and bright as anything.
What happened when it saw you?
It just stared at me for what felt like forever, probably only a few seconds in reality, and then it turned and disappeared into the woods. But the way it moved, it wasn't natural. It didn't run like an animal. It moved with purpose, almost like it was thinking about what it wanted to do next. I've been farming for 37 years, dealt with wolves, coyotes, bears, you name it, and I've never seen anything that moved like that creature.
Thanks for sharing that with us. That's quite a story. Let's hear from our next caller.
Larry, this is Gwen, and I was at the carnival tonight with my younger brother Tommy. We got there around 8 o'clock, had some cotton candy, rode the bumper cars, just having a good time like any other family. We were standing in line for the fun house when everything went sideways, and I gotta tell you, what the news is calling an animal attack doesn't even come close to describing what we experienced.
You were right there when it happened.
We were maybe 50 feet away from where it all went down, near the petting zoo area behind the fun house. The sounds we heard weren't coming from any wild dog or wolf like the sheriff's department is claiming. The first thing we noticed was this weird howling sound, but it wasn't like any animal call I've ever heard. It was almost human, like someone was trying to howl, but their throat was completely wrong for it. Deeper and more guttural than anything natural.
And what about the kids who were attacked?
The screaming from those teenagers, it was pure terror. Not the kind of screaming you hear when someone gets startled or even hurt in a normal way. This was the sound of people who had seen something that completely broke their understanding of the world. Tommy grabbed my arm so tight I probably have bruises, and he kept saying, "That's not a dog. That's not a dog," over and over.
Did you actually see what attacked them?
Not directly, but I saw the aftermath when the paramedics were working on one of the victims. I work part-time at the veterinary clinic, so I know what animal bites look like. What I glimpsed on that kid's arm before they covered him up weren't bite marks from any dog or wolf I've ever treated. They were massive, like something with jaws twice the size of a German Shepherd, and the pattern of the teeth marks. They looked almost human-shaped, but way too big and far too sharp.
That's pretty disturbing, Gwen. Did anyone else see what you saw?
There were other families around, but most people were focused on getting their kids away from there as fast as possible. One thing I did notice, though, the carnival workers seemed just as scared as the rest of us. I heard one of them telling a sheriff's deputy that the animals in the petting zoo had been acting strange all evening, pacing and whimpering like they sensed something dangerous nearby.
Folks, We're going to take a quick break here, but stay with us because I have a feeling we're just scratching the surface of what happened at that carnival tonight. The lines are still lighting up, and what we're hearing is painting a very different picture from the official story. This is Larry Cheney on KRO 94.7, and we'll be right back with more of your calls on Midnight Conversations.
Good evening, I'm John Talbot with Channel 7 News. It's been exactly 4 weeks since the incident at the Moonlight Carnival. And this morning we're reporting on a disturbing series of livestock attacks that occurred throughout the night. What makes these incidents particularly concerning is that they happened during last night's full moon, the first full moon since the carnival attacks that sent 3 teenagers to the hospital. Farmers across a 12-mile radius report finding cattle, sheep, and horses mutilated in ways that local authorities are struggling to explain. Unlike typical predator attacks, these animals appear to have been killed not for food, but in what can only be described as a frenzied assault. Sheriff's Department received over 24 calls between midnight and dawn, with reports extending well beyond our town limits into the surrounding rural areas. We now go live to Joan Raymond, who is at the Hendricks farm where some of the most severe damage was reported.
Thank you, John. I'm standing in a pasture about 3 miles north of town where farmer Paul Ames discovered the remains of 4 of his prize cattle this morning. What I'm seeing here defies explanation. These weren't killed by coyotes or wild dogs, as Sheriff's Department initially suggested. The damage is far too extensive, and the pattern of the attack suggests something much larger and more aggressive. Mr. Ames, who has been raising cattle for over 20 years, tells me he's never seen anything like this. The animals weren't just killed, they were literally torn apart. Dr. Frank Andrews examined the remains earlier this morning and confirmed that the bite patterns don't match any known predator in this region. Perhaps most disturbing are the reports from multiple farmers who claim they saw large, upright figures moving through their fields during the night. These sightings occurred across several different properties, suggesting either multiple animals or a coordinated pack behavior that's unprecedented in this area. Back to you, John.
Thank you, Joan. Dr. Andrews, the doctor who examined the livestock remains, joins us now via phone. Doctor, in your professional opinion, what kind of animal could have caused this level of damage?
John, I've been practicing medicine for 15 years, and I've seen attacks by wolves, bears, mountain lions, even domestic dogs gone feral. What I observed this morning doesn't fit the pattern of any of those predators. The bite radius suggests jaws significantly larger than even the biggest wolf, and the claw marks on these animals are unlike anything in our regional wildlife database.
Are you suggesting we might be dealing with an unknown species?
I'm not ready to make that leap, John, but I will say this: whatever killed those animals last night was extraordinarily powerful and seemed to attack with an almost human-like intelligence. The way the cattle were separated from the herd, the strategic nature of the assault, it suggests planning rather than simple predatory instinct.
Doctor, several farmers reported seeing what they describe as upright, wolf-like figures. Is it possible we're dealing with an animal that can move on 2 legs?
While bears can rear up on their hind legs temporarily, sustained bipedal movement in a predator of this size would be highly unusual. However, given the evidence I've seen today, I'm not prepared to rule out anything at this point. I've recommended that all livestock owners take extra precautions, especially during the full moon periods.
Dr. Andrews, thank you for joining us. We're also receiving reports that several families near the wooded areas have spotted what they're calling wolfman figures along the tree lines of their properties. The State Wildlife Commission has issued an advisory urging residents to avoid wooded areas after dark and to report any unusual animal sightings immediately. 3 of the teenagers injured at the carnival last month have been released from the hospital, though hospital officials report that 1 patient remains missing after apparently leaving the facility during the night shift. We'll continue following this developing story and bring you updates as they become available. Residents are advised to secure their property and livestock and avoid unnecessary travel after sunset. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
This is Larry Cheney, and you're listening to Midnight Conversations on KROW 94.7. It's 11:15 p.m. And folks, if you were listening to our show exactly 4 weeks ago, you'll remember we had some pretty strange calls about that carnival incident. Well, after what happened last night during the full moon, those calls don't seem so strange anymore, do they? The phone lines have been busy all day with people calling about the livestock attacks. And I gotta tell you, the official explanation of wild dogs just isn't sitting right with a lot of folks in our community. We've got farmers who've lived here their entire lives saying they've never seen anything like what happened last night. So let's get back to our callers and hear what really went down out there. I believe we have our farmer friend back on the line, the same gentleman who called us last month.
Yeah, Larry, it's me again. I didn't want to call back, to be honest with you, because after last month, people looked at me like I was crazy when word got around about what I said I saw. But after last night, I can't stay quiet anymore. That thing I saw at my property line 4 weeks ago, it came back, and it brought friends.
Tell us what happened.
Around midnight, my dog started going absolutely crazy, barking and whimpering like I've never heard before. I grabbed my rifle and went out to check on the cattle, thinking maybe coyotes were getting too close to the herd. What I found in my pasture this morning, I wouldn't describe it on the radio even if you let me use language I can't use on the air. 4 of my best cattle, torn apart like they were made of paper.
The news report mentioned you saw something during the attack.
I saw them, plural. At least 3 of those things, maybe more, moving across my field in the moonlight. They were working together, like a pack, but not like any wolf pack I've ever observed. They were communicating with each other, making sounds that were almost like human speech, but deeper, more guttural. And they moved on 2 legs the entire time, never dropping down to all 4s like a normal animal would.
Did they notice you watching them?
One of them did. The biggest one had to be 7 feet tall at least. Turned and looked right at me standing on my porch. Those yellow eyes locked onto mine. I swear it smiled. Not like an animal baring its teeth, but like a person who knows a secret you don't. Then it made a sound, almost like laughter, and they all disappeared into the woods.
That's incredibly disturbing. Hey, let's go to our next caller.
Larry, this is Wilfred. I drive truck for Morrison Freight. Been running routes through this area for 8 years. Last night I was heading south on Highway 9 around 1 a.m. when I had to slam on my brakes to avoid hitting what I thought was a person in the road.
What did you see?
It wasn't a person, Larry. This thing was massive, covered in dark fur, standing right in the middle of the highway like it owned the place. When my headlights hit it, it didn't run away like a deer or any normal animal would. It just stood there, studying my truck, like it was deciding whether I was worth bothering with. Then it walked, not ran. Walked across the road and disappeared into the cornfield.
Walking on 2 legs?
Absolutely on 2 legs. And here's the part that's got me shaken up. As I was sitting there trying to process what I'd just seen, I heard more of them calling to each other from both sides of the highway. There had to be a dozen of them out there, maybe more, making these howling sounds that were almost like singing. I've driven through every state in this country, and I've never heard anything like it.
And we've got a caller on the line tonight, and they've asked that we not use their name.
Hi, Larry. I wasn't sure if I should call, but something happened that I think people need to hear about. I know someone who works at the clinic, and they told me some of the kids who were attacked at the carnival last month have been coming in for follow-up care. What they've been seeing isn't normal.
What do you mean, not normal?
Their wounds healed too quickly, unnaturally fast. Bite marks and deep cuts disappearing in days, like they'd never been there at all. At first, we thought it was a good thing, but the family started reporting other changes. The kids becoming restless, agitated at night, even sleepwalking, always drawn toward the woods. And last night, the night of the full moon, 3 of them never came home.
You're saying they all went missing?
This morning, their parents found bedroom windows standing open, claw marks along the frames, like something had scratched its way out. Search parties went looking, and this afternoon they found the kids miles from town, alive but naked, covered in dirt and scratches, with no memory of how they got there. They just kept saying they were cold and calling out for their parents.
Folks, we're going to take a short break, but when we come back, I want to hear from anyone else who might have information about these missing teenagers or last night's attacks. What we're hearing tonight is painting a picture that's getting more terrifying by the hour. This is Larry Cheney on KROW 94.7, and we'll be right back with more Midnight Conversations.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Bela Gecko coming to you live, and I am fired up tonight because what we are witnessing in this small town is not some random animal attack. It is not some mysterious wildlife phenomenon, and it sure as heck isn't wild dogs like these lying government officials want you to believe. No, what we have here is a systematic, coordinated biological warfare operation that has been decades in the making. And the traveling carnival was just the delivery system for the most sophisticated weapon these globalist elites have ever deployed against the American people. They are using genetically modified super soldiers, lycanthropic enhanced killing machines to test their population control agenda on small communities before they roll this nightmare out nationwide. And I have the documents, I have the proof, and tonight I'm going to expose every single one of these demons who think they can turn our children into monsters without consequences. You think it's a coincidence that this carnival just happened to show up during a full moon? You think it's random that 3 teenagers get attacked and then mysteriously disappear from the hospital exactly 4 weeks later during the next full moon cycle? Wake up, America. This is MK Ultra on steroids. This is Project Monarch meets genetic engineering. And they are literally transforming our kids into biological weapons using ancient occult knowledge combined with cutting-edge biotechnology that makes Frankenstein look like a children's bedtime story. I've been tracking these traveling circuses and carnivals for 15 years, and they are nothing more than mobile laboratories operated by shadow government agencies who use small towns as testing grounds for their most horrific experiments. The carnies, the operators, the so-called entertainers, they're all military contractors working for defense companies that don't officially exist, funded by black budget money that Congress doesn't even know about, and their mission is to identify genetically compatible subjects for lycanthropic transformation protocols that were developed using Nazi research captured during Operation Paperclip. And now we have livestock being slaughtered in patterns that match ancient ritual sacrifice ceremonies. We have eyewitness reports of 7-foot-tall bipedal predators working in coordinated pack formations like special forces units. And the mainstream media is telling you it's wild dogs? These aren't animals, folks. These are enhanced human assets who have been subjected to genetic modification programs that activate during specific lunar cycles, turning them into programmable killing machines that can be deployed against any population the global elite wants to eliminate. The full moon isn't just triggering some mythological curse. It's activating bioengineered hormonal responses that were artificially implanted into these subjects through a combination of viral vectors, nanoparticle delivery systems, and electromagnetic frequency manipulation that literally rewrites their DNA in real time. This is transhumanism weaponized. This is the depopulation agenda in action. And your local sheriff's department has been ordered to cover it up because this entire operation is being run by the same people who brought you the Kennedy assassination, the Oklahoma City bombing, and every other false flag operation designed to strip away your constitutional rights while they perfect their techniques for mass population control through biological warfare.
Good evening, I'm John Talbot with Channel 7 News. It's been exactly 4 weeks since the devastating attacks at the Moonlight Carnival and subsequent livestock incidents. And this morning we're reporting on another series of animal attacks that occurred during last night's full moon. What makes these incidents particularly concerning is the escalating pattern we've observed, with each monthly cycle bringing more severe and widespread damage to area farms and properties. Local farmers are reporting the loss of dozens of cattle, sheep, and horses in what appears to be the most aggressive wildlife activity our region has ever documented. Unlike typical predator behavior, these attacks show a level of coordination and destruction that has wildlife experts struggling to provide explanations. We now go live to Joan Raymond, who is at the Henderson farm where some of the most devastating damage occurred.
Thank you, John. I'm standing in a pasture where farmer Paul Ames discovered the remains of 8 prize cattle this morning, and what I'm seeing here challenges everything we thought we knew about predator behavior in this region. These animals weren't killed for food in any traditional sense. They appear to have been attacked by something much larger and more aggressive than any known wildlife in our area. The damage is extensive and appears almost methodical in nature. Mr. Ames has been raising cattle for over 25 years, and he tells me he's never encountered anything like this. The bite patterns and claw marks suggest creatures significantly larger than wolves or coyotes. And the way these animals were separated from the herd indicates hunting behavior that goes beyond normal predatory instincts. Back to you, John.
Thank you, Joan. Dr. Frank Andrews, the doctor who has been examining attack sites throughout the region, joins us now via phone. Doctor, from a professional perspective, what kind of animals could be responsible for this level of destruction?
John, these attack patterns don't match any predator species documented in our region. The bite radius suggests jaws significantly larger than even the biggest wolves, and the claw marks indicate creatures with extraordinary strength and size. What's particularly puzzling is the apparent coordination between multiple attackers, as if several large predators work together to overwhelm these livestock herds.
Are you suggesting we might be dealing with a pack of unusually large wolves?
The evidence suggests multiple large predators, but their behavior differs significantly from normal wolf pack hunting patterns. Wolves typically target the weakest animals and consume their kills immediately, but these attackers seem to strike multiple animals simultaneously before moving on. The sheer destructive capacity we're seeing would require predators much larger than any wolf species native to North America.
Thank you, Dr. Andrews. We're also receiving reports from multiple farmers about sightings of unusually large animals moving through their properties during the full moon periods. These witnesses describe creatures that appear to move upright at times, though wildlife officials caution that darkness and fear can often distort perception during traumatic encounters. The State Wildlife Commission has issued advisories urging residents to secure their livestock and avoid wooded areas during nighttime hours, particularly during full moon cycles when these attacks seem to intensify. Perhaps most troubling are the reports we've received about the behavioral changes in some residents who survived earlier attacks. Hospital officials confirm that several bite victims from previous incidents have failed to report for follow-up medical appointments, and their families describe increasing restlessness and avoidance of daylight activities. While medical professionals stress that trauma can manifest in various ways, the consistency of these behavioral patterns has raised questions about potential long-term effects of surviving attacks by these unknown predators. Local law enforcement reports receiving over 30 calls during last night's full moon period, with residents describing howling sounds unlike anything they've heard from normal wildlife. These vocalizations seem to echo across multiple properties simultaneously, suggesting either a very large pack or multiple groups of predators operating in the same area. Sheriff Claude Fuller has increased patrols during full moon periods, but admits that conventional law enforcement methods may be inadequate for dealing with predators of this apparent size and aggression. The economic impact on our farming community continues to mount, with agricultural losses now exceeding $500,000 over the past 3 months. Several farms have implemented enhanced security measures, including reinforced fencing and overnight surveillance, but these precautions have proven ineffective against attackers capable of overcoming barriers that would stop normal predators. We'll continue monitoring this developing situation and provide updates as more information becomes available. Residents are strongly advised to report any unusual animal sightings to local authorities and to take extra precautions during upcoming full moon periods.
This is Larry Cheney on KROW 94.7. And folks, the calls I'm getting tonight are from people who are genuinely frightened by what they're seeing on their properties during these full moon cycles. We've got farmers losing livestock, families hearing sounds they can't explain, and a growing sense in our community that something unusual is happening in the woods around our town. The official explanation of unusually aggressive wolves doesn't seem to satisfy folks who've lived here their whole lives and know what normal wildlife behavior looks like. Let's go to our first caller tonight.
This is the farmer who's been calling your show since the carnival incident. I've got more dead cattle this morning, and what killed him wasn't any normal predator. These animals were torn apart by something with incredible strength, and the tracks I found around the pasture were unlike anything I've seen in 40 years of farming. The paw prints were enormous, bigger than any wolf, and in some places they looked almost like they came from something walking on 2 legs instead of 4.
Could you have been seeing overlapping tracks that created that impression?
I thought about that. But these prints were clear in the mud near the water trough. Some were definitely four-legged, but others showed a stride pattern that doesn't match any quadruped I know of. The game warden came out to look at them, and he admitted he'd never seen anything like it either. He took photographs and said he'd send them to state wildlife experts, but he couldn't offer any explanation for what kind of animal could make tracks like that.
Let's go to our next caller.
Well, I work part-time at the clinic, and I need to tell people what Dr. Andrews isn't saying publicly about these livestock attacks. The bite patterns on these animals suggest jaws that would have to be twice the size of the largest wolf on record. We're talking about creatures with a bite radius that doesn't match any predator species in North America. And the claw marks indicate animals with forelimbs strong enough to tear through muscle and bone like paper.
Could these be attacks by multiple smaller predators working together?
Forensic evidence doesn't support that theory. Individual bite marks show single predators with massive jaw capacity, not coordinated attacks by smaller animals. What's even more disturbing is that some of the bite patterns show characteristics of both carnivore and omnivore dentition, as if whatever did this has teeth designed for multiple types of food sources. Dr. Andrews has been in contact with wildlife biologists at the State University, but so far no one can identify what kind of animal could cause this damage.
Let's take another call.
I drive truck routes through your area, and I've started timing my deliveries to avoid full moon nights because of what I've been seeing on the highways. Last month I saw what I thought was a large dog or wolf crossing the road near Miller's Creek, but when my headlights hit it, the thing reared up on its hind legs like it was trying to get a better look at my truck. It stood there for maybe 10 seconds, balanced on two legs like a person, before dropping back down and running into the woods.
Bears can rear up on their hind legs when they're curious or threatened.
I've seen plenty of bears, and this wasn't a bear. The body proportions were all wrong, too lean and muscular, and the way it moved when it went back to four legs was more like a large dog or wolf. But no wolf I know of can balance upright for that long or move with that kind of coordination. I've talked to other drivers, and several have reported similar sightings during full moon periods, always near wooded areas around your county.
Have you reported these sightings to wildlife authorities?
I called the State Wildlife Commission, and they said they'd look into it, but they seemed more interested in dismissing what I saw than investigating it. They suggested it was probably a bear or large dog and that darkness can play tricks on perception. But I've been driving these routes for 12 years, and I know the difference between a bear and whatever I saw that night. Other truckers are starting to avoid this area during full moon periods, and that's not something we do lightly.
Folks, what we're hearing tonight suggests that whatever is happening in our area goes beyond normal predator activity. The livestock losses, the unusual tracks, the sightings of animals behaving in ways that don't match known species, all point to something we haven't encountered before. Whether we're dealing with an unknown species, animals affected by environmental changes, or something else entirely, it's clear that our community needs to take extra precautions, especially during full moon periods when these incidents seem to peak. This is Larry Cheney on KROW 94.7, encouraging everyone to stay alert, secure your property, and report any unusual sightings to local authorities.
Brothers and sisters, we gather here tonight not in celebration, not in joy, but in the shadow of God's righteous judgment that has descended upon our community like the plagues of Egypt. For too long we have turned our backs on the Lord, we have embraced the secular world, we have allowed our children to dance with demons at carnivals and fairs, celebrating under the moon like ancient pagans, worshiping false idols. And now we see the consequence of our spiritual negligence as the very ground beneath our feet has become cursed, and our neighbors, our friends, our own flesh and blood are being transformed into instruments of divine wrath. This is not random violence, beloved. This is not some biological anomaly or government conspiracy. This is the hand of the Almighty God reaching down from heaven to shake us from our complacency and force us to confront the wickedness that has taken root in our hearts like a cancer that spreads with each passing full moon. Turn with me to the book of Revelation, chapter 16, verse 2. Where John the Revelator writes, "So the first angel went and poured out his bowl on the earth, and harmful and painful sores came upon the people who bore the mark of the beast and worshipped its image." Do you not see the parallel, church? Do you not recognize the bite marks as the mark of the beast, the transformation as the judgment of God upon those who have strayed from the path of righteousness? These creatures that stalk our streets under the full moon are not monsters. They are angels of judgment, sent by the Lord to separate the wheat from the chaff, to test the faith of the righteous, and to claim those whose hearts have already been given over to darkness. Every family that has lost a son or daughter to this curse must ask themselves, what did we do to invite this evil into our homes? What sins did we commit? What compromises did we make with the world? What idols did we place before the worship of the one true God that opened the door for Satan's minions to claim our children as their own? The carnival was not the beginning, beloved. The carnival was merely the delivery system for a judgment that was already written in the book of life before the foundation of the world was laid. And now I tell you this hard truth, church, because I love your souls more than I fear your anger. The transformations will continue, the pack will grow, and the full moon will rise again in 28 days like clockwork, bringing with it another night of reckoning for this community. But there is hope, there is redemption, there is salvation for those who will humble themselves before the throne of grace and cry out to Jesus Christ for deliverance from this plague that has been unleashed upon our land. The churches that remained open last night, the sanctuaries where families found safety while creatures prowled the streets, they were not protected by luck or chance. They were covered by the blood of the Lamb, shielded by the prayers of the faithful, defended by legions of angels who stand guard over those who call upon the name of the Lord in their hour of greatest need. Tonight I am calling for 40 days and 40 nights of fasting and prayer, beginning at sunrise tomorrow, where every man, woman, and child in this congregation will seek the face of God with weeping and mourning and supplication, begging for His mercy to fall upon this cursed place like rain upon dry ground. We will pray for the souls of those who have been taken. We will intercede for their families who weep in darkness, and we will stand as watchmen on the wall, declaring the word of the Lord over this valley of dry bones until the Spirit of the living God breathes life back into our community and drives these demons back to the pit from whence they came. In the mighty name of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. Amen and amen.
Good evening, I'm John Talbot with Channel 7 News. Last night's full moon brought what authorities are calling the most severe wildlife incidents our region has ever documented, with attacks extending beyond rural farm properties into residential neighborhoods for the first time. Emergency services received over 40 calls between sunset and sunrise, reporting encounters with what witnesses describe as extremely large and aggressive predators that appear to be growing bolder with each lunar cycle. The attacks were not limited to livestock this time. 3 residents were hospitalized with severe bite wounds after encounters on their own properties, and several families reported damage to homes and vehicles that suggests predators of extraordinary size and strength. Sheriff Claude Fuller has declared a voluntary curfew during future full moon periods, and state wildlife officials have launched an investigation into what they're calling an unprecedented escalation in predator behavior. We go now to Joan Raymond, who is in the Riverside neighborhood where the Henderson family experienced what may have been the most serious encounter of the night.
Thank you, John. I'm standing outside the Henderson home where the family spent several terrifying hours barricaded inside while what they describe as multiple large animals attempted to break through doors and windows. The damage visible here is unlike anything typically associated with known predator species. Deep claw marks have gouged through the wooden siding, and the front porch railing has been completely destroyed. Mrs. Henderson tells me the creatures were large enough to look through second-story windows, and their vocalizations were unlike any wildlife sound she's heard in 30 years of living in this area. The family's security camera system captured several minutes of footage, though the poor lighting conditions and rapid movement make positive identification of the animals difficult. What is clear from the recording is that multiple large predators work together to test various entry points, showing a level of problem-solving behavior that wildlife experts say is highly unusual for most predator species. Back to you, John.
Thank you, Joan. Dr. Frank Andrews joins us now to discuss the medical treatment of last night's attack victims. Doctor, can you describe the nature of the injuries you treated?
John, the bite wounds we examined show characteristics that are difficult to explain using our current understanding of regional wildlife. The jaw pressure required to inflict these injuries would exceed that of any documented predator in North America. What's particularly concerning is that all three victims report memory gaps surrounding their attacks, which could indicate severe trauma or possible head injuries, though our neurological examinations haven't revealed any obvious signs of concussion.
Are the victims recovering normally from their injuries?
The physical wounds are healing well, but all three patients are exhibiting behavioral changes that we're monitoring closely. Increased sensitivity to bright light, disrupted sleep patterns, and what their families describe as heightened aggression when questioned about the attacks. These could be normal trauma responses, but the consistency of symptoms across all three cases is noteworthy. We're keeping them under observation for the next few weeks to ensure proper recovery.
Thank you, Dr. Andrews. State wildlife officials have acknowledged that the escalating pattern of attacks suggests either an unusually large pack of predators or the presence of an unknown species in our region. Preliminary analysis of paw prints and claw marks indicates animals significantly larger than wolves, with some measurements suggesting creatures that could stand over 6 feet tall when upright. However, officials caution that fear and darkness can often lead to exaggerated estimates of size and unusual behavior interpretations. The psychological impact on our community is becoming as significant as the physical damage. Local businesses report decreased evening hours, school officials have canceled all outdoor activities during full moon weeks, and several families have temporarily relocated to stay with relatives in other counties. The recurring monthly pattern of these incidents has created an atmosphere of anticipation and dread that intensifies as each full moon approaches. Perhaps most troubling are the reports from families of previous attack survivors who describe their loved ones becoming increasingly restless as the full moon approaches. These individuals, who appeared to be recovering normally from their injuries, begin exhibiting signs of agitation and insomnia in the days leading up to each lunar cycle. Medical professionals emphasize that trauma can manifest in various ways, but the predictable timing of these behavioral changes has raised questions about potential long-term effects of surviving encounters with these unknown predators. Sheriff Fuller reports that standard police equipment and tactics appear to be ineffective against predators of this apparent size and aggression. The department has requested assistance from state wildlife management specialists, but officials acknowledge that conventional methods for dealing with problem wildlife may not be adequate for the current situation. Federal wildlife experts are expected to arrive next week to assist with identification and potential capture or elimination of the predators responsible for these attacks. As our community approaches another full moon cycle in 3 weeks, residents are advised to secure their properties, avoid outdoor activities after dark, and report any unusual animal sightings immediately. The recurring nature of these incidents suggests that whatever predators are responsible have established territories in our area and show no signs of moving on. We'll continue monitoring this developing situation and provide updates as more information becomes available. Stay safe, stay indoors after dark, and remember that help is available for anyone who needs support dealing with the stress and fear these incidents have created in our community.
This is Larry Cheney on KROW 94.7. And folks, after last night's incidents, I'm getting calls from people who are genuinely terrified to be in their own homes after dark. What happened during the last full moon cycle wasn't just livestock attacks anymore. These creatures, whatever they are, came right up to people's houses and tried to get inside. The calls I'm receiving tonight are from folks who experienced things that challenge everything we thought we knew about wildlife behavior in our area. Let's go to our first caller.
I've been calling your show since this started, and last night I saw one of these creatures up close for the first time. It was standing in my backyard around midnight, just outside the reach of my porch light, and when I turned on the floodlights, I could see it clearly. This thing was massive, easily 7 feet tall when it reared up on its hind legs, covered in dark fur, with a head that looked like a wolf but scaled up to impossible size. When it saw me in the window, it didn't run away like any normal animal would. It just stared at me with these yellow eyes that reflected the light.
How long did this encounter last? And...
Maybe 2 minutes, but it felt like hours. The creature kept tilting its head like it was trying to figure me out, and then it started walking around the house, testing the doors and windows. I could hear its claws scratching against the siding, and when it got to the back door, it actually tried the handle. Not like an animal pawing at something, but deliberately, like it understood what door handles are for. That level of intelligence in something that size and aggressive, it's not natural.
That's fascinating and terrifying at the same time. Stay safe out there. Let's go to our next caller.
My family was one of the ones attacked last night, and I need people to know what we experienced, because the official reports don't capture how terrifying this was. We had multiple creatures surrounding our house for over 3 hours, circling and slamming against the walls and windows like they were testing our defenses. They weren't acting like normal predators. They were relentless, returning again and again no matter how much noise or light we made to scare them off. The sounds they made weren't typical animal vocalizations either. They were communicating with each other using sounds I've never heard from any wildlife.
Can you describe what you mean by that communication?
One of them tore open our garden shed, not with finesse, but sheer force, ripping the door right off its hinges. Another climbed onto our roof and pounded across it, like it was trying to drive us out. The most unsettling part was when they gathered near our front door and made these low rumbling sounds back and forth, almost like they were coordinating the attack. No pack of wolves or coyotes behaves like that, and the size of these things, they had to weigh 300 pounds or more.
There you have it, 300-pound monsters working in unison. That's insane if true. Let's take another call.
I'm one of the people who was bitten during an earlier attack, and I need to talk about what's been happening to me since then. During the day, I feel normal, but as the full moon approaches, I start getting restless, agitated, like there's something building inside me that I can't control. Last night, during the full moon, I felt the strongest urge to go outside, to run through the woods, to hunt something. I fought it with everything I had, but then I blacked out. When I came to, I was lying naked in the woods, miles from home, with no memory of what happened in between. I don't know what's happening to me.
Blacked out? Had you been drinking? Have you discussed this with your doctor?
My doctor says it's probably psychological trauma from the attack, but this doesn't feel like trauma. I didn't have anything to drink, and I've never blacked out like that before. It feels physical, like something inside me is taking over. Since the bite, my senses are sharper. I can hear things I shouldn't be able to hear, smell things too strongly. And during the full moon, lights are unbearable. My skin feels like it's burning, and I wake up craving raw meat. I'm terrified that whatever bit me didn't just injure me, it changed me.
Okay, folks. That was interesting. Let's go to one more caller.
I work the night shift at the hospital, and I can tell you that the 3 people brought in last night aren't recovering the way bite victims usually do. Their wounds are healing faster than normal, almost unnaturally fast, and they're all exhibiting the same behavioural changes. Sensitivity to light, changes in dietary preferences, and what their families describe as personality shifts that become more pronounced as it gets dark. Dr. Andrews is documenting everything, but privately he's admitted that he's never seen trauma responses like this.
Are there any common factors among all the bite victims?
They all report the same thing, feeling like something inside them is different, changed in a fundamental way. During daylight hours they seem relatively normal, but as evening approaches, especially during full moon periods, they become agitated and restless. We've had to increase security around the bite victims because they keep trying to leave the hospital at night, claiming they need to be outside, need to run, need to hunt. That kind of behavior isn't consistent with normal trauma recovery patterns.
Folks, what we're hearing tonight suggests that these attacks are having effects that go beyond physical injuries. Whether we're dealing with some kind of unknown pathogen, psychological conditioning, or something else entirely, it's clear that surviving an encounter with these predators may have long-term consequences we don't yet understand. If you or someone you know was attacked by these creatures, please continue working with medical professionals and report any unusual symptoms or behavioral changes. This is Larry Cheney on KROW 94.7, reminding everyone to stay vigilant, stay indoors after dark, and keep supporting each other through what has become the most challenging time in our community's history.
Good evening. I'm John Talbot with Channel 7 News. It's been 24 hours since the most devastating full moon attacks our community has ever experienced. And tonight we're focusing on the increasing reports of unusual behavior among previous attack survivors and the growing fear that has gripped our town. What began 4 months ago as isolated incidents at a traveling carnival has escalated into a pattern of monthly attacks that have fundamentally changed how our community functions after dark. Sheriff Claude Fuller joins us now to discuss the current security situation and the challenges facing local law enforcement. Sheriff, how would you characterize the threat level our community is facing?
John, we're dealing with predators that exceed anything in our training or experience. Last night's attacks showed a level of coordination and persistence that goes beyond normal animal behavior. These creatures tested multiple entry points on homes, worked together to overcome barriers, and demonstrated problem-solving abilities that suggest intelligence far beyond typical predator species. Our standard equipment and tactics are proving inadequate against animals of this apparent size and capability.
What about the reports of missing persons among previous attack survivors?
That's one of our most concerning developments. Over the past month, 7 individuals who survived earlier attacks have disappeared from their homes or the hospital, always during nighttime hours leading up to or during full moon periods. Their families report that these individuals had been exhibiting increasingly restless behavior, difficulty sleeping, and what appeared to be an overwhelming compulsion to go outside after dark. Despite extensive searches, we haven't found any trace of these missing persons.
Are there any theories about what might be happening to attack survivors?
Dr. Andrews at Mercy General has documented significant behavioral and physiological changes in bite victims, changes that seem to intensify during lunar cycles. Whether this represents some form of infection, psychological conditioning, or an unknown pathogen, we're seeing patterns that don't match typical trauma recovery. The timing of these disappearances, always during full moon periods, suggests a connection to whatever is causing the monthly attacks on our community.
Thank you, Sheriff Fuller. We're also receiving disturbing reports from families dealing with relatives who survived earlier attacks. Many describe loved ones who appear normal during daylight hours but become increasingly agitated and aggressive as darkness approaches, particularly during the weeks leading up to each full moon cycle. Dr. Andrews has agreed to discuss the medical aspects of these cases.
John, what we're observing in attack survivors represents something unprecedented in medical literature. These individuals show accelerated healing of their physical wounds, but they also exhibit sensory enhancement, dietary changes, and behavioral modifications that become more pronounced during specific lunar phases. Their families report that these individuals seem to be listening to sounds no one else can hear, particularly during nighttime hours, and several have expressed strong urges to leave their homes and venture into wooded areas.
Could these changes be related to the bite wounds themselves?
The correlation between surviving attacks and developing these behavioral patterns is too strong to ignore. Every individual who has been bitten by these unknown predators eventually begins exhibiting similar symptoms, regardless of their age, previous health status, or psychological background. We're treating this as a potential infectious agent transmitted through bite wounds, though the mechanism of action is unlike anything in current medical understanding.
Thank you, Dr. Andrews. The psychological impact on our community cannot be overstated. Local churches report unprecedented attendance as families seek spiritual comfort and physical sanctuary during full moon periods. Several congregations have announced they will remain open throughout upcoming lunar cycles, offering shelter to residents who no longer feel safe in their own homes. Reverend Matthew Jameson at First Baptist tells us that many families are requesting prayers not just for protection from external threats, but for loved ones who seem to be changing in ways they don't understand. Business owners report significant economic impacts from the monthly disruption to normal community life. Most establishments now close before sunset during full moon weeks. School activities have been permanently canceled during lunar periods, and several families have relocated to other counties until the situation is resolved. Real estate values have dropped substantially as potential buyers learn about the recurring monthly incidents that have plagued our community. State wildlife officials acknowledge that their initial theories about unusually large wolves or unknown predator species may be inadequate to explain the full scope of what our community is experiencing. The behavioral patterns, the apparent intelligence of the attacking creatures, and the effects on human survivors suggest something beyond conventional wildlife management approaches. Federal experts are expected to arrive next week, though officials remain vague about what specialized knowledge or equipment these teams will bring to address our situation. As we approach the next full moon cycle in 3 weeks, the tension in our community continues to build. Hardware stores report selling out of security equipment, ammunition sales have increased dramatically, and many families are making plans to leave town during the lunar period rather than risk another encounter with whatever predators have claimed our area as their territory. The question that haunts every resident is whether the escalating pattern of attacks will continue and what will happen to our community if these monthly incidents grow even more severe. We'll continue following this developing crisis and providing updates as new information becomes available. Residents are strongly advised to remain indoors after sunset, secure their properties, and report any unusual activity to local authorities immediately. For families dealing with relatives who survived previous attacks, please maintain close supervision and seek immediate medical attention for any behavioral changes or expressions of desire to leave home during nighttime hours.
This is Larry Cheney on KROW 94.7. And folks, the atmosphere in our town has changed completely since last night's attacks. I'm getting calls from people who are afraid to sleep in their own beds, families who are watching their loved ones change in ways they don't understand, and residents who are starting to question whether our community will ever be safe again. The pattern we've seen over the past 4 months is escalating, and what's happening to attack survivors is raising questions that nobody seems able to answer. Let's go to our first caller tonight.
I've been calling your show since this nightmare began, and I need to tell people what's happening to my neighbor who was attacked 2 months ago. During the day, he seems completely normal, works in his garden, talks about regular things, acts like the person I've known for 15 years. But as soon as the sun goes down, especially in the weeks leading up to the full moon, something changes in him. He stands in his backyard for hours, staring up at the sky, and I can hear him making sounds that don't seem human.
Have you talked to him about this behavior?
I tried once. Went over the next morning to ask if everything was all right. He looked at me with this confused expression, like he had no idea what I was talking about. Said he'd slept soundly all night. Didn't remember being outside at all. But that same evening, there he was again, standing in the moonlight, making those low growling sounds and sniffing the air like he was tracking something. His wife is scared to be alone with him after dark, but she doesn't know what to do because during the day he's still her husband.
It's very disturbing. Let's go to our next caller.
I work at Mercy General, and I need people to know what's happening with the attack survivors we've been treating. We've had 8 patients over the past 4 months who were bitten by these creatures, and they're all showing the same progression of symptoms. First, their physical wounds heal much faster than normal. Then they start experiencing sensory changes, enhanced hearing and smell, sensitivity to bright lights. But the most concerning development is their behavior during nighttime hours, especially as the full moon approaches.
What kind of behavioral changes are you observing?
They become restless, agitated, and express strong urges to leave the hospital and go into wooded areas. We've had to increase security because several have attempted to leave during the night shift. And when we try to stop them, they become aggressive in ways that don't match their normal personalities. 3 of our former patients have been reported leaving their homes during full moon nights and being found the next day, naked and sometimes covered in blood. Their families are devastated, and we have no explanation for what's happening to these people.
I had a previous caller report the same thing, and I accused him of being drunk. Feel kind of bad now. I hope you and the doctors can figure this out. Let's take another call.
My son was one of the teenagers attacked at the carnival 4 months ago, and I'm watching him change into someone I don't recognize. During school hours, he seems fine, gets good grades, hangs out with his friends like a normal kid. But at night, particularly in the days before the full moon, he paces around the house like a caged animal, refuses to eat regular food, and keeps asking if he can go camping or hiking in the woods. When I say no, he gets this look in his eyes that frightens me.
Have you sought medical attention for these changes?
His doctor has been monitoring him, but the blood tests and brain scans don't show anything abnormal. Physically, my son is healthier than he's ever been. Stronger, faster reflexes, better coordination. But emotionally and behaviorally, it's like there's something wild growing inside him that he's trying to control. Last night during the full moon, I found him standing in our backyard at 3 in the morning, completely naked, howling at the sky. When I brought him inside, he had no memory of going outside.
Folks, what we're hearing tonight suggests that our community may be dealing with something that has the potential to spread far beyond our borders. The changes we're seeing in attack survivors, the escalating pattern of monthly incidents, and the reports of similar problems in other areas all point to a crisis that may be much larger than local authorities realize. If you have family members who survived attacks, please monitor them closely, especially during nighttime hours and full moon periods. If you notice behavioral changes, memory gaps, or expressions of desire to venture into wooded areas after dark, contact medical professionals immediately. This is Larry Cheney on KROW 94.7, and I have a feeling that what we've experienced so far is just the beginning of something much more serious.
This is John Talbot with Channel 7 News, bringing you emergency coverage of what can only be described as the most catastrophic night in our community's history. It is currently 11:30 p.m., and we are receiving reports of massive coordinated attacks across every neighborhood in town. Attacks that began shortly after sunset and have continued to escalate throughout the evening. What we witnessed during previous full moon cycles pales in comparison to the scale and intensity of tonight's incidents. Emergency services are completely overwhelmed. The 911 dispatch center has logged over 100 calls in the past 3 hours, with reports of creatures attacking homes, businesses, and anyone unfortunate enough to be outside after dark. Joan Raymond was supposed to provide field coverage from the downtown area, but we lost contact with her news van approximately 1 hour ago. Her last transmission described seeing dozens of large predators moving through the business district in what appeared to be organized groups. Sheriff Claude Fuller managed to reach us by radio 30 minutes ago from what he described as a defensive position at the police station. His report indicated that these creatures have grown not only in numbers, but also in size and aggression since previous encounters. Quote, "We're dealing with predators that stand 8 to 9 feet tall when upright and they're working together in ways that suggest pack intelligence far beyond anything we've documented before. The sheriff's transmission ended abruptly with sounds of breaking glass and what appeared to be the creatures breaching the station's defenses. Perhaps most disturbing are the reports from families who recognize some of these attacking creatures as people who have been missing since previous full moon cycles. Multiple witnesses have called our newsroom claiming to see individuals they knew among the predators, people who disappeared from the hospital or their homes in recent weeks. While we cannot verify these identifications, the consistency of these reports suggests a connection between the missing attack survivors and tonight's unprecedented assault on our community. The attacks appear to be targeting specific locations and individuals rather than occurring randomly. Creatures have been reported surrounding the hospital, several churches where families had sought sanctuary, and homes of people who survived previous encounters. This targeting behavior suggests a level of intelligence and memory that goes far beyond typical predator instincts, as if these creatures are settling scores or completing unfinished business from earlier incidents. From our studio windows, we can see fires burning in at least 4 different areas of town. Whether these are the result of the attacks, defensive measures by residents, or damaged infrastructure, we cannot determine. The power grid has failed in several neighborhoods, and we are operating on emergency generators that may not last through the night. The howling that has accompanied previous attacks has reached a crescendo tonight, with vocalizations echoing from every direction in a chorus that can be heard for miles. We've received several desperate calls from families barricaded in their homes, describing creatures that possess the strength to tear through reinforced doors and security systems that should have stopped normal predators. Many of these families report that the attackers seem to know the layout of their homes, the location of entrances and weak points, as if they had prior knowledge of the properties they're assaulting. This intelligence, combined with their physical capabilities, has overwhelmed every defensive measure our community has attempted. State and federal authorities have been contacted, but given the remote location of our town and the scale of the crisis, it may be hours before outside assistance can reach us. The creatures appear to be aware of this isolation and are using it to their advantage, conducting what can only be described as a systematic assault on every remaining human presence in our community. Roads leading out of town have reportedly been blocked by overturned vehicles and debris, though whether this was done by panicking residents or by the creatures themselves remains unclear. The most chilling aspect of tonight's events is the apparent coordination between different groups of attackers. Reports indicate that when residents flee from one area under assault, they encounter additional creatures waiting along escape routes, as if the entire attack has been planned to prevent anyone from leaving the area. This level of strategic thinking in predators of this size represents a threat unlike anything documented in wildlife behavior literature. Our emergency power is beginning to fluctuate, and we can hear sounds of large animals testing the security of our building. If this transmission ends suddenly, please know that we have documented everything we could about tonight's events. To anyone listening from outside our community, to federal authorities who might be monitoring emergency frequencies, what has happened here tonight represents a complete breakdown of human control over our environment. These creatures are not ordinary predators. They possess intelligence, coordination, and capabilities that make them virtually unstoppable once they reach sufficient numbers. This is John Talbot, broadcasting from a community that may not survive until dawn. If you are in an area that has experienced similar unexplained predator attacks, if you have residents who survived bite wounds and then started acting strange, if you have heard reports of unusually large animals during full moon periods, prepare for the possibility that what happened here tonight could happen in your community. Learn from our experience, because we were not prepared for the reality of what we were facing, and now it may be too late for all of us.
This is Larry Cheney on KROW 94.7, broadcasting from our emergency basement studio, because the chaos that is unfolding in our town, it's just past midnight on what has become the most terrifying night our community has ever experienced. The phone lines are jammed with people calling about attacks happening right now all across town, and what they're describing goes beyond anything we've heard in previous months. I've got 3 callers holding who are witnessing attacks as we speak.
I'm calling from my attic where my family and I have been hiding for the past 2 hours. There are creatures outside our house that are enormous, bigger than anything we've seen before, and they've been trying to break in through every possible entrance. These things are smart enough to test different doors and windows, but what's terrifying is their size and strength.
Can you see how many of these creatures are around your property?
At least 6 or 7, maybe more, moving in and out of the shadows. They're making these horrible howling sounds to each other, not like any wolf or coyote I've ever heard, more like sounds from nightmares. The worst part is that they seem to be working together, surrounding the house completely so we can't escape in any direction. One of them just tore our back door completely off its hinges, and now they're inside the house. We can hear them downstairs, sniffing around, growling, looking for us.
Are you still there? I hope they're all right. Let's go to our next caller.
I'm trapped in the basement of Mercy General Hospital with about a dozen other people, and these creatures have taken over the entire building. We can hear them moving through the corridors above us, their claws clicking on the tile floors, and they're making these deep rumbling sounds that vibrate through the walls. What's most frightening is how methodical they're being, going room by room, floor by floor, like they're searching for something specific or someone in particular.
Are they trying to get to your location?
They know we're down here. We can hear them scratching at the basement door with claws that sound like they could tear through steel. But they're not just attacking randomly. They seem to be testing the strength of different barriers, looking for the easiest way in. These things are massive, probably weighing 400 or 500 pounds each, covered in dark fur, with glowing yellow eyes that reflect any light. When they howl, the sound is so deep and powerful it makes the building shake.
Please stay safe. Do not open the door. Let's take one more call.
I'm calling from the bell tower of First Baptist Church, where about 30 of us came for sanctuary. We thought the stone walls would protect us, but these creatures are climbing the outside of the building, using their claws to scale vertical surfaces like giant cats. From up here I can see the entire town, and there are fires burning everywhere, creatures running through the streets in packs, and what looks like hundreds of them converging on areas where people are hiding.
Can you estimate how many of these creatures are in town tonight?
Way more than we've ever seen before. It's like every missing person from the past 4 months has been transformed into one of these monsters, but they're so changed, so much larger and more savage than humans, that you can't recognize who they used to be. They move like wild animals, hunt in coordinated packs, and their size is beyond anything natural. Some of them are 9 feet tall when they stand upright, with fangs like knives and claws that can tear through metal.
Are they trying to get into the church?
They've surrounded the building completely, and some are trying to break through the heavy wooden doors while others are climbing toward us. The howling is constant now, echoing off the stone walls, and it sounds like they're calling to more of their kind from all directions. People up here are panicking because we can see them getting closer, and there's nowhere left to run. These creatures are relentless, and they seem to have all night to wear down our defenses.
Folks, whatever these creatures have become, they've grown far beyond the size and capability of any natural predator. They're hunting with pack intelligence, but their individual strength and savagery is overwhelming every defense our community has tried. The missing attack survivors from previous months appear to have been transformed into these monsters, but they're so changed physically that they're barely recognizable as having once been human. These creatures may have once been our neighbors, our friends, our family members, but whatever they've become is purely predatory, driven by instincts that no human reasoning can reach. This is Larry Cheney on KR Aldo 94.7, and if this is my final broadcast, I want people to know that what happened to our community tonight was beyond anything we could have prepared for. The missing people didn't just disappear. They were transformed into something monstrous, and now they've returned to claim everyone else.
This is John Talbot with Channel 7 News, continuing our live coverage of the unprecedented attacks that have been escalating across our community for the past 3 hours. It is now 2:15 a.m., and what began as isolated incidents at the hospital and several neighborhoods has spread to nearly every section of town. We're running on emergency power after the main electrical grid was damaged, and reports are coming in of fires spreading through the downtown business district. The situation at Mercy General Hospital has deteriorated completely. Our last contact with hospital personnel was over an hour ago when Night Supervisor Carol Hendricks reported that the main corridors were overrun by what she described as large, upright, wolf-like creatures. Multiple witnesses have confirmed that these attackers include individuals who were previously reported missing from the hospital, people who survived earlier attacks but disappeared during their recovery period. Sheriff Claude Fuller managed to reach us by radio 30 minutes ago from what he described as a defensive position. His report indicates that standard police equipment and tactics are completely ineffective against these attackers. Quote, "We've hit them with everything we have, and conventional ammunition just slows them down temporarily. These things are bigger and stronger than any animal we've ever encountered, and they're smart enough to outflank our positions and cut off our escape routes." End quote. We have not heard from the sheriff since that transmission. The attacks appear to be intensifying rather than subsiding as the night progresses. Residents who called our newsroom earlier describing creatures outside their homes are now reporting that these beings have succeeded in breaking through doors, windows, and even reinforced barricades that should have been sufficient to keep out normal predators. We're receiving reports that several groups of survivors have managed to reach churches and other public buildings where they've established defensive positions. St. Mary's Catholic Church, First Baptist, and the Community Center are all reported to have significant numbers of people barricaded inside. However, witnesses describe the creatures gathering outside these locations in increasing numbers. From our studio windows, I can see that fires have broken out in at least 6 different locations across the downtown area. Whether these are the result of the attacks, defensive measures by residents, or damaged electrical systems, we cannot determine. The volunteer fire department has not responded to these emergencies, and we must assume that their station has been compromised along with other emergency services. Perhaps most concerning are the reports we're receiving about the behavior of these creatures during breaks in the attacks. Multiple witnesses describe them gathering in parking lots and open areas, making howling vocalizations that are answered by similar calls from across town. This suggests some form of communication system that allows them to coordinate their activities, though the nature and extent of this coordination remains unclear. We've also received several reports from residents who claim to have wounded these attackers using improvised weapons. One caller reported that a creature that had broken into his home retreated after being struck with a silver letter opener. While we cannot verify these accounts, the consistency of reports suggesting that certain materials may be more effective against these beings warrants a mention for families still defending their homes. The scope of tonight's attacks far exceeds anything we've experienced during previous full moon cycles. What began 4 months ago with isolated incidents at a traveling carnival has escalated into what can only be described as a siege of our entire community by creatures that possess both animal ferocity and intelligence. State and federal authorities have been contacted, but given our remote location and the scale of the crisis, it may be dawn before outside assistance can reach us. I want to emphasize to anyone listening from neighboring communities that these attacks appear to be centered on our town. But we have received reports suggesting similar incidents in other locations within a 50-mile radius. If you are in an area that has experienced unexplained animal attacks, missing persons cases involving bite victims, or unusual wildlife behavior during recent full moon periods, please contact your local authorities immediately. What's happening here may not be an isolated incident, and other communities should prepare for the possibility of similar attacks during future lunar cycles. We will continue broadcasting as long as our emergency power holds out. To families still defending their homes, to survivors barricaded in public buildings, to anyone who might be listening, stay together, stay vigilant. We'll return with more updates as information becomes available.
This is Larry Cheney on KROW 94.7, still broadcasting from our basement emergency studio. And folks, it's now 2:30 in the morning, and the attacks across town are getting worse. I can hear howling echoing from multiple directions, and the emergency scanner is picking up reports of fires spreading through several neighborhoods. I've got callers holding who are in some desperate situations, including a group that's managed to barricade themselves in a church. Let's go right to the phones.
Larry, this is Alex Price, and I'm calling from inside First Baptist Church with about 20 other people. We've been here since the attack started, and these things have been circling the building for over an hour, testing every door and window. We can see them through the stained glass, huge shapes moving around the parking lot.
Alex, how are you holding up in there?
We've barricaded all the entrances with pews and furniture, but these things are incredibly strong. One of them, and I swear it moved just like Deputy Sam George, keeps circling the building. It scratches at the doors, rattles the handles, and makes these horrible noises, half growl, half scream, like it's trying to force words out but can't. When we look through the windows, we can see it isn't human anymore. It's 8 feet tall, covered in dark fur, with glowing yellow eyes and fangs like a wolf.
Have you found anything that seems to deter these creatures?
Actually, yes. Old Frank Henderson brought his hunting rifle and some ammunition he'd loaded with silver bullets. Said his grandfather always told stories about werewolves and how to fight them. When one of those things tried to break through the vestibule door, Frank shot it with a silver bullet, and it worked. The creature screamed, not like an animal, but like a human in agony, and it retreated immediately.
Silver bullets actually worked.
Larry, I didn't believe in any of the supernatural stuff until tonight, but we've had some success with the old stories about werewolves. Reverend Williams melted down a few silver chalices from the vestry, and when we pressed the silver against the doors and windows, the creatures wouldn't come near. We also lit torches from the church candles, and the flames kept them back when they tried to push closer. Someone even found wolfsbane growing by the graveyard fence, and when we scattered it along the windowsills, the scratching and clawing stopped for almost an hour. I'm a rational man, but tonight I'm willing to try anything that might keep these things away from us.
Remember that, folks. Silver and fire. Use it if you have it. Let's go to another caller. You're on the air.
Larry, this is Jenny Williams, and I'm trapped in my basement with my 2 kids. These creatures broke through our front door about an hour ago, and we barely made it downstairs in time. One of them is walking around upstairs right now, and I can hear its claws scraping the floorboards with every step. I've tried calling 911 over and over, but no one is answering. Please, if anyone can hear this, I need help.
Are you certain it's not actually your husband?
No. David's been missing since this evening. He was attacked during the last full moon and been acting strange ever since. Whatever is up there weighs at least 300 pounds. It moves on 4 legs and then 2, and it growls like an animal tearing at the walls. That's not my husband anymore.
Do you have any way to defend yourself?
I grabbed my grandmother's silver jewelry box when we ran downstairs, and I've been holding a silver necklace like a weapon. When that thing started coming down the basement stairs, I held up the necklace, and it stopped immediately, started making this hissing sound, and backed away. I don't understand how any of this is possible, but the old stories about silver and werewolves, they're true.
I don't know if anyone nearby can hear this broadcast, but Jenny Williams and her kids are trapped in their basement. If you're armed, if you have silver, and you can reach them safely, please get to her house now. We can't just sit by while families are being hunted in their own homes. Let's take one more call.
Larry, this is Paul Ames, the farmer, and I'm calling from my barn where I've been hiding with 3 other families from the area. We managed to get here when the attack started, and we've been fending them off for the past 2 hours. My neighbor Ben Morrison was taken during the last full moon, and tonight I saw him out there with the pack. He doesn't talk. He doesn't even look human anymore, but I know it was him. Whatever these things are, they used to be people we knew.
Paul, what kind of defenses have worked for you?
We melted down some silver coins and cast makeshift bullets, and they're the only thing that actually hurts these creatures. Regular ammunition just makes them angrier, but silver bullets drop them immediately. We've also lit torches and kept fires burning around the barn, and the flames keep them from getting too close. I never believed in any of this folklore, but tonight it's the only thing keeping my family alive.
Are the creatures still outside your barn?
They're out there, pacing around in the dark. Every few minutes they let out these long, bone-chilling howls, and we hear others answering from farther off in the county. It sounds like they're gathering, maybe waiting for the rest of the pack to arrive, or maybe just waiting for us to run out of silver ammunition. If anyone is listening who has silver coins, jewelry, heirlooms, melt it down and make weapons, because it's the only thing that works against these monsters.
Folks, what we're hearing tonight suggests that the old folklore about werewolves and how to fight them may be our only hope for survival. Silver bullets, silver weapons, even makeshift tools hammered out of coins or jewelry. These are reportedly the only things that can bring the creatures down. Fire also seems to keep them at bay, so if you can, keep torches burning, light bonfires, anything that throws heat and light into the dark. If you're still defending your home or barricaded somewhere safe, search for silver in any form and be ready to use it. This is Larry Cheney on KROW 94.7, and I'll stay on the air as long as the power holds, because right now, sharing information may be the only way any of us survive until dawn.
This is John Talbot with Channel 7 News, and I'm afraid I have to report that our community's infrastructure has suffered catastrophic failure. It is now 3:30 a.m., and the fires that began in the downtown district have spread to residential areas, creating a glow visible from miles away. Emergency services are no longer responding to calls. The police department has gone silent, and most of the groups that were broadcasting distress signals from churches and public buildings have stopped transmitting. The situation at our broadcast facility has become critical. We can hear creatures moving through the building above us, scratching at walls with their claws, and our emergency generator is running dangerously low on fuel. From our basement windows, I can see that the streets are no longer safe for any human presence. Large shapes are moving freely through the smoke and darkness, howling to each other across the burning neighborhoods. We lost contact with the survivor groups at First Baptist Church and St. Mary's approximately 40 minutes ago. Their final transmissions described the creatures breaking through barricaded doors and windows using brute force alone, their massive claws tearing through wood and metal that had previously held them back. The community center, which had been sheltering over 30 residents, went silent at 3:15 a.m. after reporting the sound of splintering timber and what they described as inhuman roars echoing through the building. Perhaps most disturbing are the reports we received in the hour before these groups fell silent. Multiple survivors described the creatures becoming increasingly frenzied and desperate, throwing their massive bodies against barriers repeatedly until the structures gave way. The fires spreading through downtown appear to be the result of damaged electrical systems and overturned vehicles, rather than any deliberate action by the creatures, who seem to avoid the flames instinctively. The effectiveness of silver weapons that provided hope earlier in the evening is being overwhelmed by the sheer ferocity of these attacks. Several groups reported that while silver still wounds these beings, they have begun attacking in larger packs, hurling themselves at defensive positions with such violence that even effective weapons can't stop them all. We are receiving scattered reports from individual families still barricaded in their homes, but these transmissions are becoming increasingly desperate and brief. Many describe running out of ammunition, silver items, or other defensive materials as wave after wave of creatures assault their positions. The howling communications between creatures have intensified throughout the night, with answering calls echoing from every direction across our devastated community. From what we can observe through smoke and darkness, the creature population appears to have grown significantly since the attacks began. This suggests that people who were captured earlier in the evening may have been bitten and transformed rather than killed, adding to the attacking force with each passing hour. The implications of this are staggering, as it means that every person who falls to these creatures potentially becomes another threat to the remaining survivors. Regional power grids have failed completely, plunging our area into darkness except for the glow of fires. Water pressure has dropped to nothing as pumping stations have been abandoned. Phone and radio communications are sporadic at best, and we have no indication that outside assistance is en route. The creatures appear to have damaged communication towers and power lines simply by their massive size and strength as they move through the infrastructure. What makes these attacks particularly terrifying is the apparent intelligence behind their savagery. While they don't use tools or weapons, they demonstrate problem-solving abilities that allow them to find weak points in defenses, work together to bring down larger barriers, and remember the layout of buildings where humans might be hiding. Most chilling is their persistence, their willingness to endure injury from silver weapons if it means eventually overwhelming human defenders through sheer determination and numbers. To anyone who might be listening from outside our community, to federal authorities monitoring emergency frequencies, please understand that what's happening here represents a complete breakdown of civilized order. These creatures possess the strength to tear through reinforced doors, the speed to outrun fleeing humans, and the intelligence to hunt in coordinated packs. They retain enough human memory to recognize individuals and call them by name, but their minds are completely dominated by predatory instincts. Our emergency power indicator is showing critical levels. If this is our final broadcast, I want anyone listening to know that our community fought bravely against an enemy that combined intelligence with inhuman capabilities. We tried conventional weapons, we tried traditional folklore remedies, we tried barricades and group defense, but we were overwhelmed by creatures that could tear through steel with their bare claws and endure injuries that would kill any normal predator. Learn from our experience, and God help you all if you ever hear howling under the full moon.
This is Larry Cheney on KROW 94.7. And folks, I'm broadcasting on battery power now because they've cut the main electrical lines to this building. It's 3:45 a.m., and I have to tell you, most of the groups we've been hearing from tonight have gone silent. The church, the community center, the families barricaded in the business district, they've all stopped responding to our calls. I can hear howling from every direction now, and through the basement window, I can see fires burning across half the town. I've got one caller holding, and honestly, I'm not sure how much longer our equipment will keep working. So let's take this call.
This is Dr. Ellen Drew, and I'm calling from the basement of the old library building with my family. We've been listening to your show all night, and I need to share some information that might help anyone still alive out there. I'm a folklorist by training, and what we're dealing with tonight matches every description of werewolf behavior from European folklore going back centuries.
Dr. Drew, are you saying these are actual werewolves?
I know how insane that sounds, but yes, these creatures exhibit every characteristic of lycanthropes described in historical accounts. The transformation during full moon periods, the retention of human intelligence and memory, the vulnerability to silver, the pack behavior, all of it matches documented werewolf lore. More importantly for anyone still listening, the folklore is very clear about one crucial fact. Werewolves can only maintain their transformed state during the hours of darkness on the night of the full moon.
You're saying they'll change back at sunrise?
According to every historical account I've studied, werewolves are forced to return to human form when the sun rises. That's why they're being so aggressive tonight, why they're attacking everything at once. They know they have a limited window of time, probably until around 6:30 a.m. when the sun comes up, and after that they'll be vulnerable, exhausted, and human again. The key for any survivors is to hold out for the next 2.5 hours.
But Dr. Drew, if they turn back into people, won't they just attack again next month?
That's the terrifying reality. Once someone becomes a werewolf, they transform every full moon for the rest of their lives unless they're killed with silver weapons while in wolf form. The people we've lost tonight our neighbors and family members who have been transformed. They'll retain their human personalities during the day, but they'll have no memory of what they did as werewolves. Next month, when the full moon rises again, they'll transform and attack whoever is left.
So what can survivors do right now?
Hold defensive positions until dawn. Use silver weapons if you have them, but don't waste ammunition on body shots. Aim for the heart or the head. Fire can also drive them back, so keep torches lit, lanterns burning, anything that throws light into the dark. Most importantly, don't mistake them for the people they once were. They may look like your friends or family for a moment, but once they've turned, they're nothing but predators. Keep your guard up and survive until morning.
Dr. Drew, can you hear what I'm hearing? The howling sounds have changed in the last few minutes.
Yes, I hear it too. Those calls are getting more frantic, more desperate. According to the folklore, werewolves become increasingly agitated as dawn approaches because they can sense their transformation time running out. They're probably making a final push now, trying to capture or transform as many people as possible before they're forced back into human form. This next hour is going to be the most dangerous, but it's also the last hour we have to survive.
Are you and your family safe where you are?
We're in the library's basement vault, surrounded by steel doors and concrete walls, with a few silver letter openers clutched like weapons. We can hear them upstairs, moving through the building, but they haven't been able to break through the vault door yet. My daughter keeps asking when Daddy is coming home, and I have to keep lying to her, because I saw my husband among the creatures outside about an hour ago.
I'm sorry, Dr. Drew. That must be incredibly difficult.
The hardest part is knowing that somewhere inside that monster is still the man I married. But the werewolf has complete control. If we survive until dawn, he'll transform back into himself, and he'll have no memory of trying to kill his own family tonight. But next month, when the moon is full again, he'll transform and hunt us again, and there's no cure, no way to save him except to kill him with silver while he's in wolf form.
Dr. Drew, for anyone still listening, how much time do you think we have until sunrise?
It's almost 4 a.m. now, so probably 2.5 hours at most. The creatures will become more desperate as that time approaches, but they'll also start to weaken. In the folklore, werewolves begin to lose strength about an hour before dawn, so if anyone can hold out until around 5:30, the attacks should become less intense. But I need everyone to understand. Surviving tonight doesn't end this nightmare. It just gives us a month to prepare for the next full moon. I can hear scratching sounds on the door upstairs now. They found the library, and they're trying to get down here. I'm going to have to stop talking so they don't hear my voice and know exactly where we are. But tell anyone still listening, dawn is coming. Hold your positions. Use silver if you have it, and pray that you can survive the next 2 hours.
Dr. Drew? Dr. Drew, are you still there? Folks, I think we lost that call. But what you told us gives me hope, gives all of us hope. Dawn is maybe 2.5 hours away, and if the folklore is right, if these creatures have to return to human form when the sun rises, then we just need to survive until then. This is Larry Cheney on KROW 94.7, and I'll stay on the air as long as the batteries hold out, because if Dr. Drew is right, dawn is our salvation, and we're going to make it through this longest night.
This is an emergency broadcast on an unlicensed frequency. My name is John Talbot, former news anchor for Channel 7, broadcasting from a location approximately 10 miles outside what used to be our town. KROW 94.7 went silent 30 minutes ago, and the fate of radio host Larry Cheney is unknown. Our official emergency services, our police department, our local government, they're all gone. It's now 5:30 a.m., about an hour before sunrise. And I don't know if there's anyone left alive to hear this transmission. The federal assistance we were promised never arrived. The state authorities who said they would help, they never came. What happened in our community tonight was a complete massacre by creatures that transformed from people we knew, people who became monsters during the full moon and tore our town apart. To anyone listening from outside our area, to any government agency monitoring emergency frequencies, an entire American community has been destroyed. The creatures responsible are unlike anything in nature. They possess intelligence but animal savagery, and they systematically eliminated every human presence in our town. The bite victims from previous months weren't just victims. They were being transformed, and tonight they returned to claim everyone else. If there are survivors hiding somewhere in the ruins, if anyone made it through the night, dawn may force these creatures back into human form. But I don't know if rescue will come. I don't know if anyone in authority will believe what happened here, and I don't know if our community will ever exist again. This is John Talbot, the last witness to the destruction of an American town, signing off and praying that what happened here never happens anywhere else.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
My fellow Americans, I'm speaking to you tonight about the recent events in a small Midwestern community that have generated some very wild, very inaccurate reports on social media and certain fringe broadcast outlets. Let me be very clear, very direct about what actually happened, because the fake news, the conspiracy theorists, they're having a field day with this story. First, let me say that our federal response was tremendous. Absolutely tremendous. Probably the best disaster response you've ever seen. And I've been told by many people, experts in emergency management, that the coordination was flawless. Now, what happened was a tragic industrial accident, a chemical plant explosion that released toxic gases into the atmosphere, causing severe hallucinations and temporary psychosis among the local population. The chemicals involved, and our scientists are still studying this, they created what psychiatrists call shared delusional episodes, where people believe they were seeing things that simply don't exist. We're talking about mass hysteria, the kind of thing you see in movies like the one with Jack Nicholson, The Shining, where isolation and stress make people see monsters that aren't really there. But some people, and I'm not going to name names, but some people have been spreading absolutely ridiculous stories about werewolves, actual werewolves, attacking this town. Werewolves. Can you believe it? This isn't a movie. This isn't an American Werewolf in London or one of those old Universal monster pictures with Lon Chaney. This is real life. And in real life, we have science, we have facts, we have rational explanations for everything that happened that night. The reports of large wolf-like creatures walking on two legs. These were hallucinations caused by chemical exposure combined with panic and poor lighting conditions. People saw shadows. They saw each other in a state of confusion and terror, and their compromised mental state made them interpret normal human behavior as something monstrous. It's like when you're watching a scary movie, maybe The Wolfman with Benicio del Toro, and every shadow looks like a monster because your mind is already thinking about monsters. Now, the so-called missing persons that these conspiracy broadcasts keep mentioning, these individuals are receiving the best medical care available at specialized federal facilities. They suffered severe chemical poisoning. Some of them have amnesia. Others are still recovering from the psychological trauma of believing they had transformed into animals. We're talking about people who genuinely believed, because of the chemical exposure, that they had grown claws and fangs, that they could howl like wolves, that they needed to hunt other humans for survival. The military response that some people are calling excessive was actually perfectly appropriate for a chemical disaster of this magnitude. Our hazmat teams, our medical personnel, they followed protocols that have been developed over decades of dealing with industrial accidents. The tranquilizer weapons that were used, standard medical equipment for safely subduing patients who might harm themselves or others while experiencing severe psychotic episodes. There was nothing sinister about it, nothing secretive, just professional medical intervention using the most advanced techniques available. As for the cleanup operation, this was necessary to remove dangerous chemical residues that could have affected neighboring communities. The buildings that were demolished had been contaminated beyond safe remediation, and the rapid response was designed to prevent the spread of toxic materials into the groundwater and atmosphere.
Some people are saying this was too fast, too thorough, but would they rather we left poisonous chemicals sitting there for months, affecting more families, more children? Now, I know there are recordings circulating, audio from local radio stations that night, and yes, these recordings are genuine, but you have to understand the context. These were terrified people suffering from chemical-induced hallucinations, describing what they believed they were seeing, not what was actually happening. It's like if someone took recordings from people watching The Howling in a movie theater and tried to claim that werewolves had actually attacked the audience. The families of the affected individuals are being cared for, relocated to areas where they can receive ongoing medical support and counseling. This isn't a cover-up. It's comprehensive health care for people who survived a traumatic chemical disaster. Some of these families may need years of treatment to fully recover from what they experienced, and we're committed to providing that support. Away from the media circus and conspiracy theorists who would exploit their suffering for attention, I want to be absolutely clear about something, and this is important. Werewolves are not real. They exist in movies, in books, in Halloween costumes, but they do not exist in the real world. What happened in this community was tragic, it was traumatic, but it was not supernatural. It was not a monster movie come to life. It was an industrial accident with severe psychological consequences that we handled with the utmost professionalism and care. To the families affected by this tragedy, you have my complete support and the support of the entire federal government. To the conspiracy theorists spreading false information, shame on you for exploiting a chemical disaster to promote your ridiculous theories. And to the American people, rest assured that your government responded quickly, effectively, and compassionately to a difficult situation. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
This is Larry Cheney, and if you're hearing this transmission, you're listening to an unlicensed broadcast coming from an undisclosed location approximately 50 miles from what used to be my hometown. It's been 6 days since that terrible night, 6 days since the sun rose on a community transformed by horrors that most people would never believe. I'm broadcasting on a pirate frequency because the official story, the story being fed to news outlets and federal agencies, is a complete fabrication designed to cover up the truth about what happened during that fifth full moon. For those who might be tuning in from outside our area, the official reports describe what happened as a chemical plant explosion followed by a natural gas leak that forced the evacuation of the entire town. According to government sources, the explosion caused hallucinations and temporary psychosis among residents, leading to widespread violence and property damage. They're calling it an industrial accident with psychological complications, and they're using that story to justify what can only be described as the imprisonment of every single person who lived through that night. I escaped because I was in the basement of our radio station when the military cordoned off the area at dawn. When the sun came up, just as Dr. Drew had predicted, the creatures transformed back into human beings. Hundreds of people, naked and confused, lying in streets and buildings with no memory of what they had done during the night. But instead of treating them as victims of some unexplained phenomenon, instead of providing medical care and psychological support, the federal response team that arrived treated them as enemy combatants. I watched from my hiding place as military personnel in hazmat suits moved through the town, using tranquilizer weapons to subdue anyone they found, regardless of whether they showed any signs of aggression or unusual behavior. People who had been monsters just hours earlier were now human again, frightened and disoriented, asking for their families, begging to know what had happened. They were loaded into unmarked transport vehicles and taken to what I can only assume is some kind of federal detention facility. The cleanup operation was swift and thorough. Within 48 hours, every trace of the previous night's destruction had been cleared away. Damaged buildings were demolished, burned structures were bulldozed, and the entire downtown area was sealed off with biohazard warnings. A team of specialists in white suits spent 3 days going through every building, every basement, every possible hiding place, searching for survivors or witnesses who might contradict their official narrative. But I know the truth, because I was there, because I broadcast live during those terrible hours, because I spoke with Dr. Drew and Sam Newcliffe and dozens of other people who witnessed the transformation of our community. These weren't hallucinations caused by chemical exposure. These were human beings who had been infected with some form of lycanthropy, a condition that forces them to transform into predatory creatures during every full moon cycle. The most disturbing aspect of this government response is that they clearly knew what they were dealing with. The military personnel arrived with specialized equipment, tranquilizer weapons loaded with what appeared to be silver-based sedatives, and containment protocols that suggested extensive prior knowledge of lycanthropic behavior. This wasn't a response to an unexpected crisis. This was the implementation of a predetermined plan for managing werewolf outbreaks. I've been monitoring federal communication channels, and the coded transmissions I've intercepted suggest that our town wasn't the first community to experience this kind of incident. References to Protocol 7 and lunar containment procedures indicate that there's an entire government infrastructure designed to respond to werewolf attacks. They have facilities for housing infected individuals, procedures for memory modification, and cover stories prepared for media distribution whenever these incidents occur. What terrifies me most is not knowing what they're doing to the people who were taken. These are our friends, our neighbors, our family members, who became monsters through no fault of their own. According to every piece of werewolf folklore I've researched, they have no control over their transformations, no memory of their actions while in wolf form, and no way to cure their condition except through death. Are they being held in permanent detention? Are they being used for medical experiments? Or are they being eliminated as a threat to public safety? I've tried to reach family members of people who were taken, but anyone who had relatives in town during that night has been relocated by federal authorities. Their phones are disconnected, their mail is being forwarded to unknown addresses, and any attempt to trace their whereabouts leads to dead ends and official denials. It's as if everyone who lived through that night, everyone who could testify to what really happened, has been erased from existence. The media blackout has been complete and effective. No news outlet has reported the true nature of what occurred in our town, and any journalist who attempts to investigate the story finds their access blocked by national security restrictions. The few amateur videos that were posted online during the attacks have been removed, and the people who posted them have been visited by federal agents who convinced them to recant their stories. But I have copies of our broadcast recordings from that night, audio documentation of witness testimony, and photographic evidence of the aftermath before the cleanup began. I'm going to keep broadcasting this information on rotating frequencies, moving my transmission location every few hours, until someone with the power to investigate this cover-up takes action. The American people deserve to know that their government has protocols for managing supernatural threats, that werewolves exist, and that entire communities can be disappeared when they become inconvenient to national security interests. To anyone listening who might be in a position to help, to journalists, to civil rights attorneys, to federal legislators who still believe in government transparency, please investigate what happened in our town. Look for the missing residents, demand access to the detention facilities, and ask why a chemical plant explosion required a military response with silver-based weapons, and to communities anywhere that have experienced unusual animal attacks during full moon periods. Prepare for the possibility that you're next, because this government response protocol appears to be national in scope. I don't know how long I can keep broadcasting before they track down my location, but I'll continue transmitting the truth until they stop me. This is Larry Cheney, the last free witness to the werewolf attacks that destroyed our community, signing off from an America where the truth is whatever the government says it is. Stay vigilant, trust your own eyes and ears, and remember that monsters are real, but sometimes the biggest monsters wear government badges.
This is Bella Gecko coming to you live. And I am absolutely livid because what just happened in that small Midwestern town is exactly what I've been warning you about for 15 years. And now we have the smoke and gun proof that the global elite have been testing their most advanced bioweapons on American citizens using lycanthropic enhancement protocols that make their previous experiments look like child's play. They wiped out an entire community, folks, an entire American town, and they're covering it up with the same chemical plant explosion story they've used in 17 other locations across North America where they've deployed these genetically modified super soldiers. I have the documents, I have the satellite imagery, I have the intercepted communications between the military units that arrived not to rescue people, but to eliminate witnesses and sanitize the evidence. And tonight I'm going to expose every single one of these criminals who think they can turn American citizens into biological weapons and then memory hole the entire operation when it goes public. You think it's a coincidence that this town was completely isolated, cut off from outside communication, and then systematically destroyed by creatures that exhibited military-level tactical coordination? Wake up, America! This was a field test of Project Fenris, a classified program that combines ancient occult knowledge with cutting-edge genetic engineering to create lycanthropic soldiers who can be deployed against any population the shadow government wants to eliminate. The traveling carnival that started this whole nightmare that wasn't entertainment, that was a mobile laboratory operated by defense contractors working for agencies that don't officially exist, and their mission was to identify genetically compatible subjects for lycanthropic infection using viral vectors disguised as animal attacks. Every single person who was bitten during those initial incidents was being evaluated for transformation potential, and the ones who showed the right genetic markers were kept alive and allowed to transform during subsequent lunar cycles until they had built up enough of a werewolf army to overrun the entire community and test their crowd control capabilities. And now they're telling you it was a chemical accident, that the military response was just hazmat cleanup, that the missing residents are receiving medical care at undisclosed facilities. Medical care? They're being dissected in underground laboratories to understand the transformation process, or they're being held in specialized containment units to study their lycanthropic abilities. Or worse, they're being used as breeding stock to create the next generation of genetically enhanced super soldiers. The government response protocol that was implemented there, the silver-based tranquilizers, the specialized containment equipment, the media blackout. This was an improvised disaster response. This was the activation of a predetermined plan that has been in development since the 1940s when Operation Paperclip brought Nazi occultists and genetic researchers into the American military-industrial complex. They've been perfecting these techniques for 80 years, testing them on isolated communities, refining the process of turning human populations into controllable monster armies that can be deployed against any nation or group that opposes the New World Order agenda.
Beloved in Christ, I speak to you this morning not from my pulpit, not from the sanctuary where we once gathered in fellowship and worship, but from the ruins of what was once our home, our community, our place of refuge in a world gone mad with the stench of sulfur and the howling of demons made flesh. The sun has risen on a valley of dry bones, on streets littered with the remnants of lives torn apart by creatures that were once our neighbors, our children, our spouses, transformed by a curse so ancient and so terrible that it defies every assumption we held about the nature of God's creation and the boundaries between the human and the bestial. We who survived the longest night, we who hid in cellars and attics while the damned prowled the streets seeking whom they might devour, we must now confront the terrible truth that judgment has fallen not just upon the wicked, but upon the innocent, the faithful, the children who never had the chance to choose between righteousness and sin. Where was the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob when the creatures of the pit stalked our neighborhoods? Where was the protection promised to those who call upon the name of the Lord when our churches offered no sanctuary, when our prayers seemed to fall on deaf ears, when silver bullets and fire became our only weapons against an enemy that should not exist in a world governed by divine love and mercy? I have wrestled with the angel of the Lord through this dark night of the soul, and I emerge bloody and broken, but still clinging to faith, still believing that even in the midst of this horror, even in the face of evidence that hell itself has opened its gates and spilled its contents into our quiet streets, there remains a purpose, a plan, a divine will that transcends our understanding and our suffering. Perhaps we were chosen not for blessing, but for testing, not for comfort, but for refinement in the furnace of tribulation, called to bear witness to the reality of evil so that others might believe, might prepare, might arm themselves with faith and silver bullets against the darkness that is spreading across this land like a plague of locusts. The government men came with their hazmat suits and their lies, telling us that what we witnessed was hallucination, chemical poisoning, mass hysteria. But we who saw our loved ones transformed into beasts of the field, we who watched human beings sprout fangs and claws under the light of the full moon, we know that the spiritual realm has invaded the physical world, that the veil between heaven and hell has grown thin, and that what happened here is only the beginning of sorrows that will herald the return of our Lord Jesus Christ. They can relocate our families, they can demolish our homes, they can erase our town from every map and database, but they cannot silence the testimony of those who have seen with their own eyes the reality of supernatural evil and the power of faith to overcome even the most terrible manifestations of darkness. So we go forth from this place, scattered like seeds on the wind, carrying within our hearts the memory of neighbors who became monsters, of children who grew fangs, of a community that was devoured by its own transformed members under the cold light of a full moon. But we also carry the knowledge that dawn came, that the curse was broken by the rising of the sun, that even in their transformed state, these creatures remain subject to the natural order established by God at the foundation of the world. We are witnesses to both the reality of evil and the certainty of divine sovereignty, called to warn others that the monsters are real, that they walk among us during the day in human form, waiting for the next full moon to reveal their true nature. Let us go forward not in despair but in purpose, not in fear but in faith, knowing that we have been chosen to see what others refuse to believe, to speak what others will not hear, to prepare the remnant for the trials that are coming upon the whole earth. The Lord has shown us that the spiritual battle is real, that it is fought not just with prayer and fasting, but with silver and steel, and that those who would survive the days ahead must be wise as serpents and harmless as doves, ready to love their enemies during the day and defend themselves when those same enemies transform into predators under the light of the full moon, until that great and terrible day when Christ returns to separate the sheep from the goats, the human from the beast, the saved from the damned, world without end. Amen and amen.